All right, let's switch gears right now. We've got a great interview coming up. There are calls growing for transparency about information law enforcement had leading up to the January 6th violence we saw on Capitol Hill. And joining us now to talk more about this is the founder of Just the News and the author of Fallout, Nuclear Bribes, Russian Spies, and the Washington Lies that Enriched the Clinton and Biden dynasties. John Solomon, good morning. Thank you so much for being with us. First of all, we all saw that drive-by impeachment a couple of days ago in Washington run by Nancy Pelosi. But it turns out that now, as more time has gone by, as we expected, the FBI, Capitol Police, and Metro Police may have had advance warning about major violence at the U.S. Capitol.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. At least 2 days before, on November 4th, both NYPD Intelligence Unit in New York and the FBI in its one of its Virginia offices received information indicating that there had been planning for violence in the Capitol, to storm the Capitol. There was even discussions on certain internet bulletin boards of killing cops. That was sent immediately to the what's known as the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Washington, which then brings it to the alert of the Capitol Police, to the Metropolitan Police, and to other officials. Now, interestingly, while this information was forwarded to law enforcement, and it spurred a conversation about getting National Guard backup, perhaps something that the Capitol Sergeant at Arms ultimately rejected, it was never briefed to the president. I confirmed with White House officials yesterday, the president was never told of these concerns prior to his speech in his PDB, the Presidential Daily Brief. So it had a low-level dissemination in the law enforcement communities, but it does indicate that there's some evidence, and I think even now more when you look at the early charges, that people were planning this. You don't make pipe bombs after you've been incited by a speech. You make them months or weeks or days in advance.
Right.
So there's clear evidence of planning, and there was warning that there was planning going on at least 2 days before the attacks.
Okay, so why do you think why do you think security wasn't beefed up at the Capitol in a big way? And do you have a theory about why this was sort of kept hush-hush?
Well, I'll take the former Capitol Police Chief at his word. He says he went to the House Sergeant at Arms, who reports to Nancy Pelosi, and suggested he needed reinforcements. The DOD also made the same recommendation and offered the reinforcements on Monday, January 4th. And the Sergeant at Arms came back to him and said, "We don't like the optics of having soldiers walking around our Capitol. We don't need it." I think that's going to be a fateful decision. In fact, we know it's a fateful decision. But here is the big question. The Sergeant at Arms reports directly to the House Speaker in the House, and the Senate Sergeant at Arms reports directly to the Senate Leader. What do Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi know about these conversations? Were they consulted? It seems improbable that you get a request for help from the National Guard and you get intelligence saying there's about to be violence at the Capitol, and you don't alert the leadership. I think this is everyone should be asking, what did those two leaders know, and when did they know it?
John, that's a serious accusation that you're making there. Do you think...
I'm not making an accusation.
Well, I think...
Ask you what the police chief said. It's factual.
I agree, but are you trying to say that Nancy Pelosi may have known this was coming, and I'm not going to say wanted it to happen, but allowed it to happen?
I'm saying we ought to ask the question. Someone ought to ask the speaker. Someone ought to ask the leader, what did you know and when did you know it? If your top deputies who you just fired knew it, because we now know that from the Capitol chief, we need to know what they knew. If they didn't know, it's a failure in communication in the security system. If they did know, they have to explain their rationale, what their thinking was. We filed a FOIA at the Metropolitan Police Department asking for the interviews, because Metropolitan Police in D.C. are doing the overview investigation. And they confirmed they had interviews with the Sergeant at Arms, the House and Senate Sergeant at Arms, and the police chief, son, the former Capitol Police Chief, but they're refusing to release it on the grounds that it may invade those public officials' privacy. It's an odd rejection.
That's unbelievable.
But listen, we're trying our best to find the information out. We're not making accusations.
Right.
We're saying the facts warrant asking these questions, and we haven't gotten answers from them.
In the meantime, the president was just impeached for apparently inciting that violence. If you watch his speech, or if you read the text, you can find the text online. It's very easy to do. There is no incitement. There's gray area, I'll give you that, but there's no direct incitement of violence. And we now know for a fact there were rioters, protesters at the Capitol while President Trump was still speaking a mile away. This is interesting, by the way. Remember Benghazi?
The timeline the police have released.
right?
The breach began 20 minutes before the speech even ended. That's a very important fact that hasn't gotten a lot of attention.
Do you remember what we were told about Benghazi when that first happened, right when it initially happened? We were told that it was random, spontaneous.
You're right. Yes, I did some of the original reporting against the grain of the original story that Susan Rice had put out there. Listen, fog of war always clouds the first narrative of any big tragedy, and it takes days or weeks to find out what really happened. And that's why the drive-by impeachment. I've been in fast food lines longer than it took to impeach this president.
My goodness, I'm with
we
you.
should find the facts out before making the final decision. And I think that's what the American people will learn. Over the next few weeks, this story is going to unravel. We're going to get a more complete picture. It's going to be complicated. It's never clean. But I don't think we have all those facts, and yet an impeachment's already been imposed.
John, thank you. We just lowered the bar, too. We hurt democracy, and we lowered the bar for impeachment from here on out. So that's tragic in and of itself. John Solomon, very interesting talking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Stay with us.